Why do holiday gatherings feel like emotional battlegrounds and actual battlegrounds sometimes? Because we walk in hoping for peace, hoping for a good time, but everyone brings their wounds, their stress, and their beliefs with them. But what happens when you walk into a room full of people who remember a version of you that no longer exists? That happens a lot. The world is in chaos right now, and people are carrying that tension into their living rooms, to their dinner tables. If the ills of the world consume you, eventually they will destroy you. Axiom of light. But the question is, how do you stay grounded in light when everyone around you is triggered, divided, or fighting old battles? That's what we're here to talk about today. You are listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Welcome to the new Ashla Podcast, embracing the shadow through self-mastery. I am, of course, your host, Justin, and joining me is my boy, Michael.
Hey, fam.
Somewhere behind me, I think there's a ghost. There's her arms. She's a phantom.
Always the phantom.
Always the phantom. This is a show that we wanted to do before the festive season started because there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress around this time of the year for people. And that's not even talking about all the trauma, all the other extra stuff. It's just normally stressful, right? Because your house gets filled with people and there's all this kind of stuff going on. And usually this time of year, there's a lot of political pressure, a lot of political turmoil. Parts of the world are on fire right now, literally. So it's just a match waiting to hit a gallon of gasoline, right? So it's a rough time for a lot of people. So the holidays carry this really strange tension with it, doesn't it?
No, it's crazy when you see it with some families, just that tension, that unspoken, unresolved festering that's never gone addressed or has been addressed too many times.
Yeah.
Oh, it can be tumultuous.
Well, and I think part of it's kind of weird because we frame the holidays as a time of connection, a time of gathering, a time of joy for like a few different spots in the year, but the rest of the year it's just all out mayhem and chaos. And I don't know why we walk into these things thinking that, well, the whole year was chaotic. By some magic or miracle, this stuff is going to be just peachy and joyous, and it just doesn't end up that way for a lot of people because there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of expectation, and a lot of unresolved history, like even recent history throughout the same year, throughout this year, for example.
Yep. Well, and you never know how the chessboard's laid out each year because different interactions, different dynamics, different family situations. I mean, each year is its own no shuffling. I know with my family, like we've never had a family gathering that was rough or aggressive or fighting, but everyone's sort of in this whole new sector of life because the only time we really connected was over family gatherings during the holidays.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of families, it's certainly true for me, and it's true for Heather. We don't see each other for months and months and months, and all of a sudden we're literally sitting shoulder to shoulder, right? But something happens here. We have a lot of old identities that bumping into new growth. That's where a lot of stuff, always kind of rubbed me raw about big family gatherings. It's like you show up and people just treat you like you were 9 months ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. And it's that is a match. That's like a powder keg ready to go off too. And then there's like, we talked about the generational trauma in that generational trauma show. That gets dragged along every year too for a lot of families because people just don't walk into these gatherings empty, right? Not only are they carrying the stress from all other stuff, but this has been a stressful year. It just has. It's been a really stressful, tumultuous year. And because you have the heaviness of all these world events going on, the political division, the financial pressure, right? Relationship issues. Maybe you're showing up with a different partner, or you're not showing up with a partner, or Grandma's wondering why you're not married yet, or whatever, all this stuff that happens all the time. And a lot of us bring with us these unspoken fears that we have. Now, all of that is energy, right? And all of that energy gets brought along and shoved into this crowded room where it's very chaotic.
Yeah.
It's very chaotic.
Well, I think a lot of people, like, kind of to your point, there's so much that happens within the course of a year. And when we go through the year seeing people, a lot of people don't enter into a season of change until years later. And it can when they go through it, it can be really hard dealing with the dynamics as they have evolved through that.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is where the conflict starts to take hold. And it isn't because anyone's bad per se, right? We're not saying anyone's bad for feeling the way they feel. But it's really these unhealed and unrecognized parts, and we all have them. Old patterns get activated by familiar faces. Happens too. And you know what? Like, when you show up, and I'll just give you an example for me. When my kids show up, and all of my kids, except for one, are away from me now. They're all in, different states. I think the closest one is 10 hours from here?
Yeah.
So
Two of them
are 10 hours from here. So, but when they show up, for me, it's like they never left, right? And we just kind of fall back into those familiar roles, and we fall into those familiar relationships where, all of my kids are older now. My youngest is 20. So my older kids are in their 30s, but to me, they're still children. I mean, and that could be bad too. That could be bad for some because, they're grownups. I mean, they're well into adulthood. So it's, I probably shouldn't be treating them as children, and they are technically children to me, but they're not children anymore, right? They're adults. They have families. They've grown. They got careers, and they're living away from me, and they have their own kids. So this is why so many people brace themselves for the holidays.
Right.
Because although you said that there's never been all-out conflict, but there's always that tension of a conflict.
Yep.
What do you think about the axiom that we're anchoring the show on today? If the ills of the world consume you, eventually they will destroy you.
I feel like the take I have on this is slightly different than the direction you want to go with it. But when it comes down to it, life can get hard sometimes. And when life gets hard and it starts to really sink in, depression, sort of feeling lost, and it can really be intensified, especially at family gatherings. Because when you're going through a hard time and you're going amongst people who are family but feel like strangers,
sometimes
that can lead to a lot of pressure and a lot of buildup. And I think that when we all go through our seasons of life, we never know who's going through what, depending on the family dynamics. Some families are really close. They know what's going on in everybody's lives. But there are also a lot of families, which are the main ones we're talking about here, where there's a lot of disconnection. And when you're going through that, it can really impact how you interact with your family. It can really magnify all those negative emotions, whether your responses are to be more aggravated, more hostile, or your energies to withdrawal and be distant. The ills of the world, when they consume you, they magnify into your life and ripple outwards.
Yeah, I think you explained it just fine. Because really, the truth is that life is, in a lot of ways, an external thing, right? It's both. So, I mean, yes, there's a lot of ills in the world all the time, but life itself is hard enough sometimes, like just paying your bills or worrying about, people who are food insecure. That was a big thing the last month and a half, right? It's a lot of stress, so I think you're fine. The problem at these family gatherings isn't just the politics or the war or anything like that going around. It's a mix of both. It's a mix of all these things, both external and internal, right? And what this axiom is saying to us, a lot of things external to you, a lot of this chaos, and it could be from family, or it could be from 3 countries over. They invade our internal space if we let them. If if we allow ourselves to be poisoned by that.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't matter if it's the world, it doesn't matter if it's the family system or any kind of unresolved tension. If we let these things consume us, we lose our center. We lose our stillness. We lose our sense of peace. Remember, peace doesn't mean quiet. Peace means staying still and at center despite the chaos that's going on to us, right? And when we lose our center, what happens? We get pulled into these old cycles. We get pulled into this stuff. And then peace starts to feel impossible. And then guess what the default is? When peace feels impossible, there's only one thing that can take its place. It's a power vacuum, right? What takes its place when peace is impossible?
Chaos.
And conflict. Chaos and conflict, right? When you've removed the possibility for peace of any kind, conflict is the default at that point. So the ethos that we're tying into that's going to anchor today's show are truth and connection. Why are those important?
Well, one connection, which is fairly obvious. Connection is the connection you have to all people within your family, that are present, that are there, and we must respect that connection. It doesn't mean we have to put up with crap. We got to respect there is a connection there.
Yeah. Truth requires us to do what? Show up as we are now. As we are now. Not as we were when we were 12, not as we were when we were whatever, and not show up for our parents or our loved ones, our family, for when they were in their 30s or 40s. We need to show up for them now too. That's truth. That is truth. And connection is powerful here because we must be present. We must have presence. And sometimes that requires our patience and to open our hearts up, be a little bit vulnerable. Not at the cost of our boundaries, right? But we have to kind of open ourselves up because the agreements that tie us into this episode today, fairly easy ones too. Family, which is, of course, obvious, right? And respect. We must have respect for ourselves and for others. So let's kind of talk about the roots of family conflict. What are some of the roots?
Man, it can vary from family to family. You got favoritism. You have feeling neglected. You have those tensions that rise or fights that happen that break apart. And then when they're forced back together, the tension that comes from that. You have needs that aren't met.
Still, right? Still to this day. You're getting to be an old feller yourself there, Michael. And I guarantee there are things that are still unmet, right? For you. They are for me.
Well, I think one important thing to think about when going through this is, one, yes, we don't want to tolerate stuff, but there's this quote I heard a year ago, and I love it. It's called, "Don't let the ice cube melt." When you have people in your life that you want to build connection with,
yeah,
you got to meet them where they're at. And you got to be willing, if you don't want that ice cube to melt, because it will. Time happens like that. It seems like it's slow, but it moves fast.
Yeah.
And if you want to build a connection, again, you got to meet people where they're at. You got to, if you want to spend more time with a parent, you want to build a stronger relationship, you got to be able to understand where you fit into their life so that you can better understand how to fit them into your life. And it doesn't mean tolerate things. It doesn't mean deal with abuse. But it does mean that when we have connections that matter to us, that we want to foster, we have to be able to conform ourselves enough to the mold to be able to meet that connection where it's at.
Before we started recording this episode today, you had said to me, "Man, this is a really timely topic. I'm gonna need this topic." And you know what? I need this topic too. I'm just as guilty with some of this stuff as anybody, right? Because if people don't meet me where I am now, or they haven't, right? And I just stopped giving them the opportunity to try and meet me where I'm at, then I'm just as guilty as they are.
Yep.
I am.
And same goes here.
Yeah, I am. And, I don't have a problem admitting that because we're all about truth and authenticity here. And, it is what it is. I'm just as guilty of that as anyone. Probably more guilty of it in the later years, in these later years. Now, I don't feel any shame for that because, well, that doesn't solve anything. I stopped blaming a long time ago, but I don't feel any shame for it because if I know better, I got to try and do better, right? But these these roots, they really tie into responding to the old versions of us. And that's really something I want to hammer home today, because they do it to us, we do it to them. And, you know, if you were a rebel, boy, they hold that to you forever, don't they? And then you feel obligated to be the rebel again, be the problem child, right?
Yep.
Or if you were the peacemaker or the problem solver or the strong one, as we've said before, their reaction to us makes us, maybe even out of spite, to then fill those roles again and then be the opposition to what they're putting out there, instead of just trying to meet each other where we are. Because for the most part, we have moved on beyond those roles because we're not in those environments anymore, right? But man, we go right back to them, don't we? Especially when people start stepping.
Well, and I think a part of it is it lives inside our nervous system. And it's just the minute we get into that environment, we're automatically triggered back into that place.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be consuming, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Right. Because there's familiar voices and there's familiar tones, right?
Yep.
And there's familiar behaviors, because some people don't change. They just don't. But as the three of us were talking before, we have to try every time. And this is where the high road comes in. And I know I've always got people that are like, no, the hell with the high road. I'm not going to let them abuse me. I'm not going to let them talk down to me, whatever. Again, you don't have to. You should never do that. It's just like when we talk about forgiveness, right? And forgiveness really plays a role in this topic today too. But when we talk about forgiveness, it's not about excusing what people have done. It's about taking the weight off of you and letting it go. So again, the holidays are stressful enough already. Financially, all these people are together who don't normally are together a lot. That creates just regular stress, especially for people like me who, I get overwhelmed pretty easy if I'm around a lot of people with a lot of energy, and, I gotta go recharge, so, but we have a lot of old expectations, and these unspoken roles, they add to the tension too. And probably, like you said, it sits in our nervous system. It certainly sits in our mind. Once we start to feel it, we start to relive it again. You got the person who's expected to keep the peace, the person who's got to be the clown, another person always trying to make everything perfect, and someone has to keep their mouth shut, right? Be quiet, keep your mouth shut, all for the sake of keeping the peace or keeping the harmony. And this takes us back to contracts.
Yep.
Contracts and agreements, right? So as we get forward with this later, as we keep going, we're going to be talking a lot about patience, a lot about integrity, responsibility, and this might rub people the wrong way a little bit. But remember, the goal here is to at least get us thinking, at least getting us trying to find some awareness in these things when they pop up.
Planting seeds.
Planting seeds. Plant seeds. I still got to plant seeds for me too, even though some people think that I've got it all together all the time. And I'm not faking it. I just look like I do because I've been doing it for a long time. So let's talk about emotional regulation in these high stress times, because they're really like pressure cookers, aren't they?
Oh my God. Well, I think again, like, if there's one thing to take away, monitor your nervous system when you're in these interactions. What comes up? Is it anxiety? What survival mechanisms is common for you to do? Is it fawning? Is it freezing? Is it fighting? What is it that's triggering inside you? Learn to take that pause when that comes up. Yeah. Learn to let it not touch your mind. That's probably one of my biggest things, is learning that just because something's happening in the body doesn't mean something's wrong in the external.
Right. We make up a lot of stuff as people, don't we? We assume the worst and we make this shit up.
We're master storytellers.
Well, and we're paranoid as hell, because that was the default for so long. And it's very difficult to not feel that way. Now, I will say, as I've always said before, I say it to her a lot, and I've said it to you a few times, but yes, you're probably not in danger, but your feelings are real to you. So it doesn't actually matter if it's dangerous or not. You have to learn to discern whether there's actual danger or not, right? This is why we practice these things. And this regulation starts before we walk through the door, on the car ride there, right? I mean, while we're sitting at home putting on our Thanksgiving dinner tie or whatever. This is when we start. We start early before we even get there. We need to prepare ourselves. So centering yourself ahead of time, that's smart. That's wisdom. That's not avoidance. Avoidance is like not showing up. That's wisdom. You're creating a good base for you to operate from in that time. And you get to show up intentionally. And you get to start having a chance to respond, not react to things, right? What kind of grounding things can we do for this?
Breath work, I think, is the number one go-to. I know it's one of our favorite things to say, but it's so powerful. Do the box breathing. One of the greatest breathing techniques I've been practicing recently that I've stumbled on is when you just take a breath in, breathe out like it's a sigh of relief, and just do that continuously. That tricks the sympathetic nervous system into calming down and have the parasympathetic nervous system activate. Helps you turn off the amygdala so you can actually use critical thinking skills instead of emotional thinking skills.
Yeah. Well, that was my go-to. When I was in law enforcement, that was my go-to. Because as I've said before, you go to certain calls and you are freaking out. I don't care how long you've been doing it. I don't care how big and tough you are, because there's so many unknowns. And those box breathing, the 4-count breathing, the calming breath, those are powerful. Those are powerful. Put your feet on the ground, right? Take your shoes off, or before you put your shoes on, do a visualization. Imagine that you're planting yourself. You're rooted. You're grounded. Create a few affirmations for yourself. If you're into praying, say a prayer, right? Get your mind ready. Get your mind ready for it. So,
one other one I just want to add here is really intention setting, which is so vital to this, because while you're going to this event, you can either catastrophize and start creating that reality. And I'm not talking about what you think about, you bring about. I'm talking about if you envision how you're going to present yourself, how you're going to go through it, and it's going to be, you don't look at this as a crime scene. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you're going into these events and it's going to be hell. Like, there are those of you out there where I'm not going to deny, family gatherings are a crucible.
Sometimes, yeah.
But more often than not, this is an imagined reality. And if we go in there with the intention that it's going to go good, often it will. To have that mindset can help you alleviate so many negative emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, dude. 100%. Very simple things, little micro things we can do before, during, and after, right? If stuff is, you learn to look for the signs, right? Train yourself, practice to see these early signs of an overload, whether that's emotional or mental or whatever. And you feel it in your chest, your jaw clenches, you're trying to break your teeth, right? You're starting to get irritated. That happens to me. I get annoyed and irritated before anything else. And then I know, it's time for me to do what? It's time to pause. Because if I don't pause, if I don't step outside for some air or something, just for a minute, then I'm either going to go into fight or flight, defend or escape, right? And if you catch this stuff early, you prevent a spiral. And it's easy for any of us to fall into that. Especially the kind of, if you're catching a lot of heat, if you're catching a lot of bullshit. But there's some micro things we can do. Step outside for a minute. Say, excuse me, I gotta get some fresh air. It's hot in here. Whatever. Do some breath work. Use grounding touch points. Touch yourself. Press your fingertips together. Put your hand over your heart.
EFT tapping. I don't know if we've ever really talked about it on here, but I do EFT all the time. When I get overstimulated, overloaded, I step away and it's just, I am safe. I am
Explain
okay.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, it's activating, again, the parasympathetic nervous system. It's just tapping yourself and bringing yourself to touch instead of inside, and helps bring you out of your body.
Wasn't that the video? I seen a video with
didn't see that.
Wayne Dyer, right?
Yep.
He was on a podcast. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, well, and this is a therapeutic practice that is
right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find that video and I'm gonna post it in the show summary today when this hits. So you guys, that is a very powerful one, and you have talked about that before. It is really powerful. So I'm gonna give you guys a really simple, the 4-breath reset. You're gonna inhale deeply for 4 seconds, and I want you to imagine you're drawing light into your chest, and just let that settle. Draw it in, let it settle. Let it fill your vessel, right? You do that for as many times as you need. I'm not a fan of saying do it exactly 4 times. Do it exactly whatever you need. But you're gonna inhale for 4 seconds. So, and then let it out, right? And try to exhale for like 4 to 6 seconds. And I want you to let the light in, and you're going to be releasing the tension. You're going to be taking out the trash, as I like to call it. And you're just going to do that for as long as you need. And then I want you to actually touch your heart. This does 2 things. Number 1, you're connecting to yourself, right? But you're also checking. Your heart will tell you when it's freaking out. Do this enough times where your heart is steady and slowed down. And you're actually checking it. But you're also connecting. And you can say to yourself something like, I choose to be present. I choose peace. I show up as who I am now, right? It's just a very simple breathing, connection, and then affirmation. It's kind of the trifecta there. So, and you can do that anywhere, not just for family gatherings. I do that all the time. I do it all the time because sometimes I get caught off guard. It's just in life in general.
Yeah.
So, when you're at Walmart, some guy starts talking crap to your mom and, you have a choice. Beat the crap out of him in front of everybody or try to chill yourself down a little bit.
Well, I think one of the most important things you can do in these situations when you're dealing with family, especially with people don't know what you've been through the last year. People don't know, even then, especially if you have a family that's a bit disconnected, they don't know who you are on the inside. One of the most important things you can tell yourself while you're going through things to help you not be overwhelmed by it, don't take anything personally.
Mm.
And that's hard. I get that. That can be a feat sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But often when someone's coming at you, it's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them.
That's absolutely right. What I do is a reflection of me. What they do is a reflection of them. Right? What did Courtney teach us all? What was it? I love you. I forgive you. Please forgive me. Yep. I dare not try to say that.
I definitely butchered it. I have no doubt that was absolutely incorrect, but I gave it a shot.
I admire your courage because I butcher it so bad. I do. I butcher it really. It's like me not knowing how to say Reiki. And for some reason, I butcher that every time. So let's talk about showing up authentically. And this is really allowing yourself, choosing to be who you are now, not who you were, because if we're doing it right, Michael, we aren't the same person.
Nope.
We aren't the same person. I liken it to dying and being reborn. Every time I change, every time I grow. And a lot of people will say that this being authentic or not being allowed to show up authentic or being challenged when you're trying to be authentic or not allowing yourself to be authentic is one of the main sources of family conflict.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, again, we all go through changes throughout the year. And when people want to hold us to our past selves, it's hard not to take it personally.
Because we like to cling to what people were because it feels familiar. We that's the devil we know, right? It's fine. It's better that way for a lot of us. But we do evolve beyond these different identities. We do evolve beyond that person that we were. And here you come stepping in, Michael, all confident and you've grown, and that disrupts things for people.
Yeah. Especially when you got a spring in your step.
Oh man, it does. It does. But that's not your burden to carry. Period. That's not your problem.
Agreed.
You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to be different. And sometimes that different looks a little rough, and sometimes that different looks a little polished. We go through these cycles. We go through these hills. We have these hills and valleys. We all do, forever and ever. But when you show up authentically, you're choosing to be who you are currently. You're coming with presence, not perfection, presence, not masked, not performing, present. And you're not shrinking to fit some kind of bullcrap idea that people had before. You don't need to perform the role. The only thing you need to do is just be present. That's in a perfect world, right? Not what you did to keep the peace or to make people happy. Because what happens when you build your peace on self-abandonment?
It's what you end up defaulting to. I tell you what, it ends up being just, and when you're doing this healing work, as you go to these situations, some of the best growth work you're going to do is entering these situations. Because when you get to really do the healing work is when you're put in a situation where you're triggered. And there is nothing more triggering than these type of events. Take it as a challenge.
You must present yourself to the forge. You must present yourself to the forge. And remember, you're both the instrument, you're both the forge. I won't say both. You are the forge, you are the material, raw materials, but you are also the smith. So it gets really rough. It gets really hot and gets really uncomfortable. But walking in the light is not comfortable. It never will be. Because it presents the shadows. It shows us the parts of us that we don't like. Those things aren't bad. Those things are you, part of you. But when you build your peace on these outdated models of who you are, who you really are, that's not peace. And guess what? The bill comes due eventually, right? That emotional debt demands repayment. And it will come when you don't want it to, or when you're not ready for it. So here's another point I want to make. A lot of people will say that people being authentic is like them rebelling. They're being rebels. You're just being a rebel. You're just being a rabble rouser. You're just being a whatever because you're trying to be you. You're trying to be authentic. Hell no. Right?
You're
just being you. And they don't like it.
You can't take it personally. You got to be able to assert, this is who I am and this is how I'm showing up.
Right. Yeah. You don't need to defend that. You don't need to prove anything either. They can have their emotional reactions, and they will, but it's not your responsibility to monitor or determine how they feel. That's their responsibility, right? You're in charge of you. They need to be in charge of them. And I'm sorry, they just won't like it, but too bad. Too bad. That's part of growing and being mature, right? Just as you've changed, others hopefully have and grown, but you got to be ready for them not to have either.
Yeah, or even gone in the opposite direction. That does happen.
It does. It does. But I will also throw this in here. If you expect others to allow you to be who you are now, you must also give them the same grace, right? We got to be willing to see their growth, or at least give them the opportunity to show up as they are. Again, if they haven't grown, or they went the other way, or they've grown, none of that is your problem. You have your path and they have theirs. We intersect at times, and sometimes we need to help each other grow, but otherwise, it's not your problem. It's not your job. So another point I want to make here about being authentic. Let's talk about expectations. If you let the expectations of other people, no matter how close to you, no matter how distant to you, no matter what their role was in your life growing up, whether they were in charge of you or whether you were in charge of them, if you let their expectations, their discomforts, their judgments, their outdated image of you dictate who you are, you're going to be in big trouble. And then you're going to have to pay that bill too.
Well, I think expectations play such a huge role. I mean, as I talked about, going in with a mindset of things will go good. Never have expectations on anyone, including yourself, because that's where a lot of turmoil can come from. You get your life, you're starting to build your life up, you're starting to do all this healing work, then all of a sudden you get in this environment, and all that starts to just allow yourself to go with the ebb and flow. Allow yourself to go with the natural process that is unfolding before you, including within you.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do, Michael, is empower you, right? I'm not trying to bark at you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just trying to empower you, to let you know it's okay to be you, that it's okay to show up as you are. Everyone else be damned, right?
Yeah.
That's the point we're trying to make. Because I would rather have someone show up to me as they are, whether I agree with their choices or not, whether I have some kind of problem with something they did throughout the year to someone else, that's not my business. I must show up as I am and they must show up as they are. But I just want people to feel empowered to do that. Now, you don't need my permission. Not giving permission for people to be who they are. They should always strive to be that way. And we don't always do it. We have our moments where it becomes too overwhelming and we do kind of start falling back. But the key there is awareness. We have to prepare ourselves for that to happen, because again, none of us are perfect and we will stumble and we will fall. We will trip, but we got to get back up. We got to stand back up and not let any of that deter us. One thing we can do is set boundaries. And these boundaries are really that bridge between peace and resentment, right?
Yeah.
This is where we draw the line or hold the line, as it were. And this becomes one of the greatest challenges, because if we do stumble backwards a little bit to a time where we didn't have good boundaries, then that makes things way more challenging, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's a slippery slope.
And this challenge becomes really tough because remembering that peace and resentment are both built moment by moment. We're not always at peace. We're not always resentful, though, either. We have to be ready for these things moment to moment to moment. And boundaries are the difference between those two, between peace and resentment. So, but as we always say, a boundary is not a wall, because if we start encasing ourselves in walls, then we start to imprison ourselves, right? We want to make sure that we're not punishing ourselves for being who we are. We're drawing a line in the sand, essentially. I still see you. I still see you. You still see me. But look, please do not cross this line, or there's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah. Well, and boundaries are never for other people. They're for ourselves to know where people stand. There are certain types of behaviors that you need to have these boundaries with, because as you grow, you know what you deserve. And disrespect, and I mean real disrespect, because there's a lot of stuff nowadays where people get their feelers hurt pretty easy. But there's learning where someone is truly trying to offend you, attack you, come at you, and when they're speaking their mind.
Yeah. We talked about this on the last show. We were talking about, we growing up, and if we have, comedians in our family and they're very sarcastic, it's really tough to tell the difference. And we have grown up with that still hanging on us sometimes, Both of us had dads who were very sarcastic and really dealt with life through humor. And they were just joking around. But for me, I didn't really realize a lot of that until I was already out of the crucible, man.
Yep, exactly.
I had time to reflect, and I look back now and I'm like, because I have the same sarcastic ass attitude as my dad does.
Well,
and when I do it, I think it's funny now. But then I have to remember that, well, it may not be funny to everyone. It might actually be hurting people sometimes. So, but these are things I didn't realize until afterwards. So we have to make sure that we're not punishing ourselves with our boundaries, and we're not using them to hide, right? As you said, it's like an instruction manual for how you need to treat me and how I'm going to treat you. How hard is it?
I think one thing I just got to throw out there is another thing to keep in mind is generational differences.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I run into a lot. Like, my brothers are older than you.
Yeah. I know. I've met one or two of them.
Yeah. And it's very strange when we interact. And I know one of the issues one of the contention points I have with one of my brothers is he likes to talk shit.
Yeah.
And for me, that's something reserved for people who know me intimately.
Right.
Otherwise, it is hard for me to deduce. Like, are you making a judgment on me, or are you just like, what's really going on here?
Right.
And it's knowing that disconnect there. And then I got Gen Zers and Gen A's within my family, and they act completely different. But it's being emotionally aware to the perception of reality being dramatically different. Our parents, totally different worlds.
That's a great point, because I hadn't even, when I was putting the show together, I hadn't even considered the generational. I mean, it's obvious, right? And it is a big thing, because we have the millennial, back when I was younger and my kids were younger, it was like the millennials versus the boomers. You know what I mean? Type thing. And now these Gen Alphas taking swings at old Gen X here. Watch out. The boomers will let you do it. We won't. We'll eat your lunch. We'll take your lunch money.
Some of the boomers.
But it's true. It really is true. And like when I met I met one of your brothers long before I met you. And when I met you, I at first I thought you were like his kid. So yeah, there is a big difference between you and your brothers. They're much older than you. Like I said, older than me, and I'm old as shit, So, well, at least that's what Shannon said.
Word for word.
That's what she said. She said, "Damn, you're old, dude." And I'm like, I had to like block the camera and wipe a tear from my eye. It hurt me, cut me so deep. But anyways, the generational thing is big. It really is. And whatever was too much, I didn't see it too bad when I was a kid because, I'm only one generation obviously removed from my parents, and I got along with my grandparents just fine. But my kids, their generation, they were born in this world kind of looking at the boomers and saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" You know what I mean? It's always like this. It's like every other generation seems to have a problem with each other. So that's true. I didn't even think about it. Why didn't I not think of that? Good call.
You wanted to give me something to throw in there.
I had to. But boundaries, before we move on, boundaries are really communicating something. They're saying, I want connection with you, but I'm not gonna submit my well-being, not at the cost of my well-being, right? I want to be here. I want to connect, but not in a way that requires me to abandon myself. We're not doing that. That's what that boundary says. Or I want peace, real peace, true peace, centered, not the kind that requires my silence or suppressing who I am. So it helps to identify these non-negotiables. We all should have non-negotiables. Again, that line in the sand, right? So what are some things we can ask ourselves to draw those lines, to establish those healthy boundaries?
I think one of the best things is exactly what you said. It is defining where those boundaries are. And it doesn't mean you have to blatantly say it to people. As much as it's good to assert, like if someone crosses the line, "Hey, I don't appreciate that."
Back up, buddy. My turrets are ready. Go.
But you affirm to yourself before you go to the gathering. If someone has a reputation for stepping on your boundaries, decide what those boundaries are and affirm them when you get there. "Hey, I missed you, man. Also, I would appreciate if you would not..."
Right.
Blanky blank. "I don't appreciate the snark comps. I don't appreciate you being condescending to my wife. I'm not going to tolerate that this year."
Yeah. Yeah. What am I willing to tolerate this year? I'm going into it already establishing what my boundaries are or what I'm willing to put up with. Right?
Yep.
That's a good one. Who or what is going to drain me if I don't have these boundaries? That way you can be ready, prepared, and give myself an exit strategy or a pause strategy, right? How can I step away early if things just go to hell, right? Because sometimes they do. We can't help it. We can't control that. We can control us. We can control how we react and respond. And we should always try to respond versus react. And these things don't have to be dramatic. As you said, you don't have to make people sign waivers. Here are my boundaries. I want you to sign this waiver, please. Thank you very much. Yep, right there. Yep. Initial here, here, here. Sign on the bottom. Those are my boundaries. Doesn't have to be dramatic.
But stating expectations is so important. I see this in so many different realms where there are boundaries that are constantly crossed. And the biggest reason they're crossed is because you never spoke up about them.
Yes. Well, and a lot of times you didn't know better. You just didn't know better.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Right? Yes.
Ignorance yet knowledge. Right? And they're often most powerful when they're delivered without an apology or without any drama, without any anger or any kind of, unless someone just pokes and pokes and pokes. Just be truthful and steady. And if you prepare yourself in this way, you set up your boundaries beforehand. And like I said, you do the grounding stuff beforehand, you do the breathing beforehand, and you have a plan. You have a plan to deal with it when stuff does go south, or an exit strategy. It's the best thing you could do because you're going to go into it being confident, right? And confidence is key right here. These things, and this is why boundaries are important and why they work, is because they reduce that emotional cost, that bill that's going to be due if you ignore them, right? And you have these clear expectations, and it really helps prevent misunderstanding. Now, a lot of that work happens during the conversations. Communication is important too, but we can't always communicate with everyone because sometimes we're at two different planets, right? And that's just the way it is. But if people care about you and they care to try and get to know the new you, the authentic you, then they'll understand. And you can help them navigate that. Help them learn who you are now. What things you've done to grow. What things have happened to push you to grow. Because you either get what? Better or what?
You get better or you get bitter.
Get better or get better. Because if you don't set these boundaries, you will have a ton of resentment. And it'll be a pressure cooker, man. So because if you don't, then if you have a lot of resentment, you're gonna feel like you didn't take care of yourself. You're gonna really start feeling like some shame, and you're gonna feel like you betrayed yourself just for their comfort. And you should never do that. You should really practice and learn not to do that. So let's talk about navigating some difficult personalities. I think that was the nicest way I could say that. I was really trying to figure out a way to we all have that uncle or that aunt or that sister or brother or mom or dad that's, let's say, difficult. They have a difficult personality. We all have that person or people, sometimes it's more than one, who are super overly opinionated. That's one of my pet peeves, right? You know how I feel about that kind of stuff. And when I'm challenged with that personally, I really gotta step up the stillness. I really gotta push myself back to center because that's a trigger for me. I understand that, wait a minute, you're just blowing hot air. You're just blowing shit out your rear end. What are you even talking about? Right? Or another pet peeve. You can tell I wrote these notes because I have two of my pet peeves right at the top here. People who are just overly passive aggressive, which drives me crazy. Do you have it? I shouldn't ask you this because I don't want you to out anybody, but I think we probably share, and everybody out there probably shares some of these two that I'm talked about already, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna out nobody.
No.
But I will say it's like when you have these dynamics in your family, understanding character, again, don't take things personally, right?
That's our mantra
boundaries
for
where they
today.
need to be. Say what?
That's our mantra for today. Take nothing personal. Don't take it personal.
Because when you're dealing with a lot of this stuff, it can be triggering. is the word for this.
It is. Yeah.
And again, know where your boundaries are. They can know where to have those lines with certain people.
Speaking of triggers, I have found the only people that have a problem with that word are those people who sit there and poke at old things and old wounds and try to. You ever notice that? Like people who dislike the word trigger are the ones that are always trying to trigger everybody.
Why are you getting upset? Why are you getting upset?
Exactly.
Always poking at the bear.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have these difficult personalities, I'm really proud of myself for that because I have other words that I just decided not to use. But how do we respond to these things? I would start off by saying, don't match their intensity, right? Like you said, don't take it personal. What about validating feelings without agreeing to any kind of dysfunctional behavior?
This can set some people off. I'd just like to throw out there. But being able to confirm, it's like, I know you're upset about blankety blank.
That I did 30 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I see you, but it's time to let it go.
I was also 12 years old at the time. And...
Right. And maybe cut me a little bit of slack. And kind of learn to recognize and discern when disengagement protects peace. Find those sweet spots, right? We talk about the sweet spots all the time. Know when to engage and when to step away. Valid things. It's not about retreat, although retreat is a perfectly tactical thing.
Again, have that escape route.
Yep. So every family has this spectrum of personalities, we'll call it. Some are warm and grounding. Really, we love being around them. They just fill us up, right? Others are challenging, are outright overwhelming, or deeply triggering. And because these people haven't seen us in so long, usually during the holidays, everything is amped up because they gotta get it all in, right? I'm not gonna see you for another 11 months, so let me give you a whole year's worth to take home with you.
When again, it's knowing where you end and someone else begins, not allowing that to overflow into you. Often when we deal with dysfunctional families, there's a level of enmeshment. There's a level of family roles, as we were talking about earlier. Allow yourself, as you are coming into this authentically, to know where you are and where your family ends. Because that'll help you keep your distance, keep your peace, and allow you to show up authentically.
But there's always somebody that wants to debate with you, and you're like, dude, I'm here to eat like ham and turkey and stuff. I'm not here to,
Yeah.
we're neither one of us are running for president. I don't think we need to have this debate, right? And again, it's none of this is about you. Don't take it personal. They're probably performing, or they're falling into a pattern or a way of coping. And you don't have to get in the ring and fight it out. You don't have to. You get to choose. One of my favorite ones is that kind of passive aggressive, and sometimes it's a parent, right? Usually a parent here, or an aunt, or someone older than you. So someone who had some kind of, a control over you when you were a kid. They will mask their comments. They'll make these comments and they try to mask them as being concerned or affection, but they're always just full of criticism. That's why I don't like passive aggressiveness. What about the overshare? Oh, go ahead.
But I was just going to say, there's also the ones that they'll talk shit in a humorous way, but they're actually being condescending. That's the one that gets me the most. I'm like,
my favorite.
Yeah, that one kind of a mix between two, that passive aggressive person, but the person who also pokes at you, right? And sometimes it's intentional. I think some of it's unconsciously, but this really comes from an attachment to an old version of you. They're attached to that. What about the overshare? You have any problems with an overshare? I don't generally have a problem with that.
See, I can sometimes be the overshare. The time the overshare crosses the boundaries is when they're trying to spill the tea on the whole family to the family. They're trying to stir the pot, as you say.
Yeah. So here are some ways that we can respond. Again, don't match their intensity. If they get louder, just kind of let them make an ass of themselves. Everybody else is going to see it because everybody else feels the same way you do. They're like, oh, we're not here to fight. The more aggressive they get, the more grounded you should try to be. You are not required to mirror their dysregulation. Their emotional lack of emotional maturity is not your problem. Look, you say, I get it. This thing obviously really matters to you a lot, but I'm really not going to discuss this today. Or if it gets real bad, you say, look, I get you're frustrated, but I'm going to step away. I'm going to go outside and get some air. Don't follow me. Right? Or I'm here to enjoy family time, man. I'm not here for this debate. And just remember, stepping away is not disrespect. It's taking ownership and stewardship of your energy, of your peace, of your boundaries. So the other thing, I've got one more thing for us today, and I want to talk about forgiveness, because I think forgiveness has a big part in this. Because a lot of this conflict comes from old things, old stories, or old hurts, or unresolved things, right? How powerful is forgiveness here?
I think forgiveness is imperative. I mean, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. We say that a lot on this podcast, but family is something that is very important. That is something that you have had with you your whole life, and they know a lot of your wounds intimately. But forgiveness allows us to put away the baggage of the past and approach our relationships with curiosity.
Yes. I love that.
It allows us to start anew if we so choose. Don't get me wrong, there are those handful of narcissists out there, and I'm not talking about how we label everyone narcissists. You got some of those really just messed up, manipulative asshole people in your lives, or that are just out for themselves.
Yeah.
But when you approach a relationship with curiosity, with understanding, with forgiveness, you lay the groundwork to actually build something real with someone who's known you through your life.
Yeah.
And I know with my family, our issue isn't really many of these types of dynamics we spoke of, more than just this disconnection of really knowing each other. We've all had busy lives. We've all kind of gone in our own directions. And now as we meet every year, there's just more and more distance between us and our understanding of one another. But curiosity is the cure for that. Being inquisitive of what's going on in people's lives. Being curious of what their struggles are or what their victories are. Not going in this with ego or envy or competitiveness.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Because let me tell you something. I've said this before, probably in a couple of shows back. When I left home and I started a family with my wife, she became my immediate family. My new family unit is my immediate family. My parents, my brothers, my sisters became extended family. That's how it is. We go to, and this is something I didn't think about for the show, but this is something that happens a lot too. When families come together, right? You say, I bring my family to my extended family and we have dinner, we have whatever. There's no way in hell I'm letting anyone disrespect my family, right? I'm going to stand up. I'm going to fight if I have to. A lot of times, a lot of these problems start when, Jack takes Sally home for Christmas and somebody is running their mouth at old Sally, and it could be Sally's own brother or something. And, you have to choose. Are you going to protect her from her own family? You going to protect her from her own brother? Or are you just going to let that happen? Now, there was, and I'm just going to paraphrase here. There was a question going around on TikTok because there was this video where the girl took her husband and her went to their family for a week or something. They were visiting, okay? And the brother kept poking at her and poking at her and poking at her, trying to get her, and being very disrespectful, calling her names, calling her words that he shouldn't be calling her. And her husband pulled him off to the side and said, look, bro, I'm not going to let you speak to her like that anymore. I don't care if you're her brother. She's my wife, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you speak to her like that. If you do it again, I'm going to knock your ass out. You're going to be snoozing on the kitchen floor if you do it again. Some time went by, and the brother called his sister a whore. So the husband walked over there and knocked his ass out, just in front of everyone. It's like, I told you, I warned you. So then the family, in response to that, is telling her to pick her husband or them. It's either us or him, right?
I picked my husband.
And she picked her husband, as she should. Blood of the covenant is thicker than the water in the womb. If you can't be respectful to my wife, or if her family can't be respectful to me, then we have a big problem. So that's something I just kind of want to throw in there too, because we have these, nobody's ever happy when families are created and mixed. There's a lot of tension there that happens too. So, but it's back to forgiveness. It doesn't, again, as we said before, it does not require you rewriting what happened in the past, or minimizing what happened, or minimizing the pain, or forgetting that it ever happened. It doesn't ask you to excuse what was actually harmful. It says, I'm just, like, as you said, I'm not going to carry this wound around as my identity. I do not identify with what happened. I'm going to take off these chains. I'm going to throw off this weight. I'm going to drop this baggage, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to choose freedom over resentment. You're not erasing the truth. You're just releasing the weight. And you can forgive people and still maintain your boundaries, can you not?
Yeah. I mean, it's like right now I got a family member who is dear to my heart. And he went down a really dark path. And from what I understand, he's getting his life together. But those boundaries from the chaos that came from that are there. I have forgiveness for what happened. But also, until it gets to a point where I know I can let him back in, I'm going to keep those boundaries there. And there's no ill will, there's no resentment, there's no negativity towards it. It is forgiveness while being respectful to myself.
Yes. Yep. Because forgiveness is not a free pass for them to re-enter your life in those familiar, unhealthy ways. In fact, sometimes that means they never re-enter your life, and that's fine. This is about not holding on to things. It's entirely possible to keep your heart open, but also keep the door guarded, right? You can love someone and limit the access, and sometimes that's the best way to do it. You can also, and you should be able to, let go of resentment without letting go of your self-respect.
Yes.
And you can, and you will move toward peace and that peace and that stillness, that inner center, without moving back into old patterns, regardless of what other people are doing around you. The past never should dictate the present moment. Another person's memory is not a mandate for you to care about that. And some of this just goes back to practicing seeing other people, seeing others and yourself through what's being presented, not what was then. So, any closing thoughts for today's show?
This is one of the most challenging times of the year, and unfortunately, I feel there are far more dysfunctional families out there than there isn't. And a lot of that has to do with the change in tides, the way things work, things happen. But I think I'm glad we ended this on forgiveness, because forgiveness is the first step to really opening the doors.
Yeah.
And if we want to build connections with our family, forgiveness and meeting people where they're at is pivotal. People can change, but also don't expect people to change. Know where you need to have your boundaries to protect your peace, because that needs to be what is most important in your relationships. If you're overgiving, trying to build connection, draw a line. If you're tolerating bad behavior, poor communication, draw a line. Be verbal about it. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. Don't be afraid to be authentic, especially to those who have been in your life your whole life. But also, don't be afraid to do what you need to do to have your best life.
Well said. If you follow the path of light, I want you to step into this season being that light bearer and not being a sponge. These things can feel like we're stepping into a storm because those old patterns swirl and personalities collide, and the emotional climate can shift without warning. That just shifts one way or the other. But I don't want you walking into these things like a sponge meant to absorb everybody else's bullcrap and everyone else's chaos and everyone else's deal, You walk in as a light bearer, steady, grounded, and illuminated from within. And you're not obligated to absorb people's crap. Let go of the idea that you have to fix or mediate or carry all the emotional weight in the room for everyone else. That was never your responsibility, ever. Let that go. Your only task is to stay rooted in your presence, in your authenticity, right? Show up grounded, and so you can respond instead of reacting. Show up centered and balanced so that no matter what's going on, you still hold clarity. Show up authentically so that you bring the truth where old stories try to come back in. And again, show up as a light, right? Show up as a light bringer. This season, let your presence be the message, not your explanations, not your defenses, not your rehearsed responses. Just you, your presence. That alone is enough healing for everyone. You can be gentle.
The change you want to see.
Exactly. Be the change you want to see. Well said. Be gentle without being passive. Gentle doesn't mean passive. Be open without being porous. Be loving without abandoning yourself. That's what I want to leave you guys today as far as topic. And, just kind of a gentle affirmation, a blessing for you. May you walk into these spaces with strength, compassion, and a light that cannot be shaken or blocked. And may you honor your growth always. Extend your grace wisely and carry peace wherever you go. That's my blessing for you guys for this holiday season. Our affirmations. I remain centered in light even when others lose theirs, especially when they lose theirs. I show up as who I am now, and I honor the growth in myself and others. I release the past versions of me that family still sees and step fully into my truth. My peace is my responsibility, and I choose to protect it with grace. Love guides my responses. Respect guides my boundaries. That's probably our show mantra for today, right? Love guides my responses, but respect guides my boundaries. And an exercise. We talked about preparing yourself before you enter. This exercise kind of put this together so that you can anchor yourself and ground yourself before you enter. All right? And it's meant to be done the day of, right? Before you step into this chaotic mess sometimes, or even on the car before you go in. Not while you're driving, though. Let somebody else drive. So that way you are able to present you and not the past version that other people expect. Step one is going to be we're going to place our hand or our hands, if you prefer, on our heart. And I want you to close your eyes for a moment and just sit and allow your breath to deepen. Don't force it. Just let it gradually deepen. And you're going to do this until for as long as you need to feel steady and to kind of let the noise quiet, kind of find that peace. Step two is you're going to say this to yourself out loud, quietly. It doesn't matter. And you're going to say, I am not who I was. I am who I am now. And I want you to try and think of at least 3 things, 3 qualities that you embody today, now, presently. It could be, I am calmer. I am wiser. I am grounded in light. Choose 3 things that are true for you. And I want you to visualize and set an energetic boundary. You can do this by picturing a soft spear of light surrounding your entire body. And if you need to start at your head or start at your feet, it doesn't matter, but just gradually see yourself encased in this soft spear of light. Not a wall, not a shield, a boundary of energy. And a boundary that helps you stay clear and compassionate. And optionally, you could say something like, what belongs to others will not enter me. What belongs to me will not be taken. And this honors both connection and the sanctity of life, our respect for ourselves and others. Step 4, as Michael said earlier, we're going to set our intentions. Choose one, at least one, but you can choose as many as you feel you need. And this is to set the intention, to set the standard, the stage for how you're going to show up. It could be, I will stay centered no matter what. I will listen without absorbing because I'm not a sponge, right? I will respond, not react. I will protect my peace. I will honor and love who I've become. However many you need. But say it slowly and intentionally. Let it settle inside your body. Feel it in your nervous system. Let it settle in your chest and in your gut. The last part of this, I want you to visualize a graceful exit. Imagine yourself leaving the gathering feeling proud, calm, true to yourself, and unshaken. And what this does, it just helps us, it prevents our mind from bracing for conflict or, being in a state of fight or flight before we even get started. And this conditions our nervous system to be prepared for peace rather than expecting the other. So when you do this, and you can do it several times, you can do it throughout the day before you go. This will shift the whole experience that you're going to have. When you're centered and when you're calm and when you're anchored, you don't get pulled into this crap. It makes it harder for them to do that. And again, if you do get pulled into it, pause, take a break outside. So, and this doesn't have, you can use this for any kind of thing that you need, but it's best if you do it the day of. Don't do it the day before. Do it the day of. So thank you so much for joining us today. That's all we got. It's kind of a shorter show. Oh, maybe not. Time just flew by. Felt like it was shorter. Make sure to check out all our socials. We got YouTube. We should know this by now. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram.
Spotify.
Well, of course it's Spotify. We're doing the show on Spotify.
Apple Podcasts.
And our website, newashla.com. Pretty easy one to remember. Until we meet again, with love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.